delighted to have back with us Josef Mastragostino, who is the Chief Investor Relations Officer of Tinexta. Tinexta just released their FY21 results and introduced a new guidance for the coming year and the coming 3 years. So shall we start there? And Josef, could you just give an overview of how Tinexta performed in FY21?
Thank you, Russell, and thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure to go over FY21 numbers, in particular because we registered another strong year versus 2020. And I have to say that if you look at our overall performance, we were able to register very strong revenues. We came in at 375 million of revenue. Adjusted EBITDA came in at 99 million, and NFP over EBITDA was at 2.67 times. Net profit was extremely strong at 40 million, and even more meaningful was free cash flow, which was north of 55 million for the year. During FY21 results, which were actually issued on in March, in particular on the 17th, the board proposed 30 cents to the per share in terms of dividend, which is equivalent to about 35% in net profit. So another year also of growth in terms of dividend. As you all might recall, the dividend is a function of the predictability of the cash flow, given that this is a cash flow story. In terms of the full year 2021 and the fourth quarter results, I think it's important to highlight how strong the fourth quarter was. In particular, if I look at the fourth quarter from a revenue standpoint, the revenues grew very strong and they were around 42% higher versus 2020. But even more meaningful was the actual performance in terms of EBITDA adjusted, which was 46% higher than the prior year, showing a very strong operating leverage that EBITDA has, and in particular that our business is able to generate. Even net profit at a fourth quarter 2021 base was strong, and it grew 36% versus the prior year. So I would say that in particular, the full year 21 results were very strong. We were able to achieve all the planned targets, both in terms of revenue as well as EBITDA. In particular, for EBITDA, we were expecting around 96 million of adjusted EBITDA, and we came in stronger at a bit shy of 100 million euros. So very strong performance. The net financial position over EBITDA, therefore our leverage ratio, came in at 267. But if we look at that figure, in considering all the actual M&A that was carried out, we can appreciate that the increase is entirely driven by the M&A. Remember, this is a growth company that is growing very strongly, both from an organic base, but as well as the external lines, and also M&A is always an important part of our strategy and therefore of our DNA.
Okay, that's great. And following on from that, could you just talk about your guidance for the coming year and the next 3 years?
Yeah, so we issued during our business plan 2022-2024, which was issued to the market on the 28th of February, we were able to give out a very detailed outlook, both in terms of key financial targets, but also from a strategic standpoint. But let me start with the key financial targets. On a 2022 base, and only considering the organic growth, which I think is extremely important to appreciate the business model of Tinexta, we expect revenues to grow versus prior year anywhere between 10 and 12%. The adjusted EBITDA is going to be in the range of 8 to 10% growth. So already on an organic base, we're growing high single, if not low double digits. Always on a 2022 base, if we consider the recently announced acquisitions, the revenue is even stronger, and it is around 18 and 20% versus prior year, and EBITDA is growing even more, around 20 and 22% growth versus the prior year. Again, operating leverage is a key word here, and we're very strong on delivering the EBITDA growth versus the already very strong prior year performance. On a net financial debt over EBITDA adjusted basis, I think it's very interesting to appreciate how the expected 2022 figure with the acquisitions we announced is expected to be around 2 times. So already in 1 year, we're able to kick down almost 1 time EBITDA during a given year. We also provided a 2024 outlook, which is extremely important for us, also to give more perspective in terms of how the business is evolving. And considering the acquisition, we expect by 2024 to reach revenues in terms of CAGR 22-24, to be around low double digits, and the EBITDA to be, again, on a CAGR 22-24 base, to be around mid double digits. Even more meaningful is the leverage ratio. So NFP over EBITDA is expected to really go down at around sub 1 or anywhere between 0.7 times and 0.8 times. Again, providing very strong support on how good the market in which we operate is, and as well how good we are in bringing home profitability and therefore giving back to shareholders.
Thanks, Joseph. An interesting part of the new 3-year plan is that you want to increase the integration within Tinexta. So could you give some idea of where you are, where you're heading to, and the expected benefits from more integration within the business?
Yeah, Russell, that's a key element of our strategy. We came out with a very detailed 22-24 plan, which I suggest all investors that are interested to look at, because there's a lot of detail in particular on the increased integration. So the 4th pillar of our strategy is to increase integration. And as we said, and as many know, the company has grown tremendously in the last couple of years, but in particular, it has grown through M&A. M&A also brings added value. But together with the added value, there is the need of integration. And this need of integration is ever much high versus before. I mean, Tinexta has grown tremendously. The average ticket of the M&A has grown. If I look at the 2 most recent acquisitions, we closed an acquisition in November of 21 in Europe, in particular in France, where we bought Certurope. Certurope is a French authority in the digital trust space. So we are acting as a consolidator. We are growing, and for that matter, we have bought this company for a total consideration of around 70 million euros. So 70 million euros. Then just a couple of weeks ago, at the very beginning of February, we closed eValue, which is a company that operates in the division of innovation marketing services. In this case, it was Warrant that purchased this company. And we're operating in Spain. So again, internationalization becomes the key element of growth now more than before. Because Tinexta was already looking at the international market with really great detail. We had already carried out some acquisitions, but now we are becoming an active player in the European arena, and we want to become a consolidator in the next 2 or 3 years. So this is very important from, again, an integration standpoint. Internally, we are already carrying out very important initiatives, among which a centralized CRM. Centralized CRM becomes pivotal because we have a centralized group sales and marketing function, which, as we all know, enables, in terms of central coordination, the development of an integrated offer, and therefore a related go-to-market. The answer here is we don't want to overwhelm the customer. We obviously have very different services. We have a wide array of solutions that help day-to-day operations. But what we want to do is we want to really try to go to the final client and try to hear from him or her what their needs are, and then tailor the solutions that we have in the ecosystem of Tinexta, to find the greater solution. And that's a key priority for us. We said that extensively throughout the plan, and I'm here to, again, underline this concept. For example, we will be streamlining, the newly instituted For Value channel, which is, the acquisition of For Value from Intesa Sanpaolo, the largest bank in Italy, one of the leading ones in Europe. And we are using this channel to strengthen the group's commercial strategy for services to the small, medium enterprise. So the small, medium enterprises continue to be the key element of growth for Tinexta and obviously for the Italian market. We are looking at, again, in terms of integration, to increase the operational synergies within the organization. So we are actively looking, where the areas in terms of synergies can actually happen. For example, a key element of synergies is the recently acquired eValue company, which in Spain is conducting consultancy services, just like Warrant. So imagine the two, study offices that need to study all the European directives in terms of European funding. These two can act synergically between them and start working, towards a common goal, which is European funding. So these are some of the elements, but there are so much more that we are mapping within the organization, and in the plan horizon, we plan to increase in that sense. Another element is to simplify the corporate structure. This is a very important topic for us. We've acquired many companies. Some of the other companies are within the business units, but they need to be rationalized. They need to be, as we said, they need to be simplified. So that's another important element in terms of increased integration. And lastly, increase and improve the post-M&A integration. That's now an important element. For example, we really want to stress this to the market. We've sold the 16% of InfoCert to Bregal Milestone, which is a particular private equity that buys minorities, and that in this case will help us extensively in the post-merger integration. So on one side, we will increase and accelerate the internationalization. On the other side, we also have a post-merger integration, which will become pivotal for the success of the company. We have the right people, we have the right structure, and we will carry out successfully.
That's great, Joseph. You touched on it already. One of the key pillars for the 3-year plan is M&A and growing the business internationally. And the last year or so has been very busy from an M&A perspective for Tinexta. So could you just talk about what we might see from Tinexta over the coming years with respect to M&A and growing internationally?
Yeah, great. Russell, I think that's a great question because, M&A has always been in the radar of our strategy, and it's been another key pillar of the strategy. I mean, if I look back since 2013, we've conducted 27 deals, including the most recent ones, for a total value of around €500 million, probably 450 million or so. So we're talking about a huge number of companies which have been integrated, which have been successfully integrated, and that have always been accretive in terms of value. I think that's an important step that needs to be underlined in terms of the financial community. All the companies that we bought were generating cash and are still generating more cash than they did since we purchased them. So starting from that point, again, if I look at M&A, we have a very selective M&A criteria to which most of the companies need to abide to in order to enter into the ecosystem of Tinexta. In particular, I'm talking about that the target needs to have a solid business fundamental. So they need to be operating in a business market that is absolutely solid and it's growing by itself, first of all. Second, it needs to be a market that itself is growing. So we're not looking at undermanaged asset. We're not looking at markets that are in downturn. We're looking at markets that are growing strongly. Usually, I mean, if I look at the acquisitions that we recently brought home, these were growing double digits versus prior year. So these are very strong growth markets. Third, which is very important for us, it needs to have strategic fit and finish. And when we say strategic fit and finish, we mean that the products or service that the company the target company has needs to be a complement to the current portfolio. The relationships it has are extremely important. For example, in South Europe, we bought a company that was the third player in the market, right? And by being the third player in the market, it had the relationships with key elements or key professional groups, such as notaries, such as accountants, such as all the analysts and the group of professionals that would help us access small, medium enterprises in France. So this is of extreme importance. For example, another important thing, when still keeping under the umbrella of strategic fit and finish, is also the ability to issue certificates in France. This is a very important element because by having the ability to issue certificates, we can directly sell our blockbuster products and services that are very demanded here in Italy, in France, reducing the go-to market and without having any particular burden in terms of authorization. So these are some of the important elements. Obviously, there needs to be another important element or stringent criteria is a disciplined financial policy. They have to have proven, in their prior performance years that they have done, that they've had a disciplined financial outlook. So we look very closely at their EBITDA, we look very closely at their cash flow. And lastly, in fact, the most important element is that they need to be cash flow generative. If I look again at the two most recent acquisitions, South Europe generates on a standalone base 37% EBITDA margin, and eValue in Spain generates again on a standalone base 50% EBITDA margin. So these are companies that when they come into the Tinexta world, they are actually accretive from all stands.
That's great. Thank you, Joseph. And there's a lot of detail in your presentation about ESG, which is an increasing focus for a lot of investors. So could you just talk about what Tinexta achieved in the last year from an ESG perspective and what we should expect to see from Tinexta over the next few years?
Yeah, thanks, Russell. So the idea here is that, first of all, we're going from compliance to engagement. So ESG is now becoming a pivotal aspect of our strategy. We specifically highlighted among one of the key pillars together with the people and the organization. So what we carried out during 2021 is that we performed a benchmark ESG gap analysis, which was fundamental to better understand the company's position first, and then try to understand where we can improve and how we can improve it. What we did was we referenced standard, the standards utilized were primarily the major indexes. I will mention just a few. For example, the Global Reporting Initiatives Index, the UN, MSCI, or SASBS. So these are just some of the indexes that we benchmarked ourselves with. And we didn't just stop there. We actually went further and we looked at creating a roadmap of the key initiatives that will be carried out throughout this year. For example, we will start with a very important element, which is introducing ESG KPIs within the compensation and the benefits of key managers, because we want to start from the top in order to deep dive into the corporate culture of ESG, from a company standpoint, but also from a business unit standpoint. We're talking about we've created an academy in-house, which is extremely important to, I would say, allow individuals to really better understand the corporate culture. We are now a company, a small conglomerate of many companies, so we need to have a focused academy that has the goal of looking at leadership as being a key element for growth, both for managers as well as all employees at all levels. We will look at the environment from introducing an environment policy as well as introducing an environment manager. Diversity policy is key, together with all the framework that steps from anti-corruption as well as fiscal policy. We will start CO2 monitoring, and once we've done a full assessment, we want to create, a roadmap with clear goals to be achieved in the next 2 or 3 years. So I think we started very strong. We will continue in that direction, and we have, I think, the right policy in place in order to continue to be much more successful from an ESG perspective, and therefore engage at the very end all stakeholders in that matter.
Okay, thanks, Joseph. My final question, now I won't try to pronounce the Italian, but could you just talk about what the PNRR is and what it potentially means for Tinexta over the next few years?
Sure, Russell. So the PNRR, which is Piano Nazionale di Ripresa e Resilienza, is fundamentally what we call the recovery plan. The recovery plan of Italy in particular. As you all know, exiting out of COVID, all European countries have a specific and dedicated recovery plan. Now, in Italy, we have the largest amount that is actually allotted to a single country. In particular, we're talking about great numbers. 235 billion euros will be dedicated to the Italian economy. And here behind all these great numbers, we must say a couple of things. And I think it's very important to say this at this stage, right? Obviously, we are a big fan of the plan. Who would not be, right? The point is that when we look at the speed, the scope, and the how with which the plan will be actually enacted in the Italian economy, that is very hard for us to know, us being obviously Tinexta Group. So it is definitely a very important plan, and there are clear allocations within this plan, which I will discuss in a minute, but we have obviously no control of the plan itself. Another important element that needs to be stressed is the fact that we will probably benefit from the plan only in an indirect way. So we will not be benefiting it from a direct way. That means that the primary sources or opportunities will stem actually from public and private tenders, partnerships, or public administration's requests for proposals. That's let's say, those are the options with which the plan will be enacted. Now, we will benefit in an indirect way means that we will need to participate to those tenders, either by ourselves or with key partnerships. For example, we do have very strong partnerships already in-house. And those tenders will need to be, they need to be, at the end of the day, we will need to win them in order to successfully bring home the different projects. We act as a digital, obviously, improver, if I may, of the Italian economy, right? The PNRR has different allocation. It has, as a priority, green transition. So out of the 235 billion, 70 billion will go towards green transition. The second most important, priority is digitalization, with around 50 billion. So I think all the building blocks are there. I think the key priorities are set in stone. We need to say that obviously the most recent news about what is going on, at an international level, in particular with, the Ukraine conflict, will definitely need to be taken into consideration. But having said all this, the plan is definitely something that is very important, that will happen. The scope and the speed with which, as I said at the beginning, is something very hard for us to predict. Also, and I will leave it at that, Italy and digitalization show 4 critical aspects that deserve top priority. First of all, Italy ranks very low in digitalization of the economy in the society. It ranks 25th in the European Union. There are very strong delays in the digitalization of the public administration. We ranked last, 28th. We also have skills shortage. That means that individuals need to be trained, and we rank 25th. And last, there are very strong delays in the digitalization of the business, especially in the small, medium enterprises. So you see all these four critical aspects see Tinexta as an enabler, as an improver, as a company that can actually make a difference both for the public administration as well as the small, medium enterprises. So I think that's pretty much the answer to the question.
Thank you, Joseph. That's all been very interesting. Speak soon.
Thank you very much.